Hey everybody, it's Katie. If you are about to give birth or if you have just given birth and you're thinking about breastfeeding and a nursing relationship, today's video is for you. I want to talk about today what to expect within this first 30-day window of a breastfeeding relationship, kind of what that's going to look like. I breastfed both of my girls, and so I wanted to share with you some of the things that I went through and just some of the larger things to kind of look out for in this first 30 days that might potentially derail or cause it to be kind of like, oh man. So today I want to talk about those things. As I mentioned, I breastfed both of my girls. I'm actually still nursing my 2 and some month-year-old daughter. Not sure when that's going to end. I do see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's a ways off, but it's coming. Anyway, so I nursed my first until she was about 3.5, and that really looked like mostly just morning snuggles and comfort. And then my youngest daughter is about 2.5. So the first daughter, my oldest daughter, when I started off with the nursing relationship, fortunately I had some people around me that were very encouraging and very determined with me and for me because they knew my heart was to be able to have a nursing relationship with my daughter. They were very, very encouraging for me as I kind of waded through the first 30 days, the first 6 weeks or so, because you would think that it's like, okay, I've got 2 nipples and I've got a baby with a mouth. I'll just plug and play, right? Sometimes, but more often than not, there's usually some tweaking that needs to happen. And so fortunately, I had people around me early on who helped me tweak the things that needed to be tweaked to help me establish a good nursing relationship. And then with the second, it was not 100% easy, but I knew what to expect, so much easier to go into it that way. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I'm going to kind of throw out a little disclaimer, and that is that I am not a doctor. I'm not a board-certified lactation consultant. I only really have the 2 experiences from each of my daughters, and then, the friends around me who have allowed me into that space in their life. So I don't know everything. I would strongly suggest that if you are pregnant and you're getting closer to the end goal, I would strongly recommend that you find a lactation consultant. If you have insurance, figure out who your insurance company will pay for you to go to. I would get that done before the baby arrives, because the last thing that you need to do when you're trying to feed your child and you have 2 bricks taped to your chest and your baby won't nurse and you're freaking out and wanting to nurse but nervous about it, or it's not happening or whatever, I would suggest that you have that lactation consultant information on hand, ready to go when and if you need help, because that's just one less thing that you have to worry about when you've got a brand new baby. First question that I want to talk about is, when will my milk come in? So it's going to vary. It's usually within the first 2 to 5 days. And before your milk comes in, you're still producing something called colostrum, aka liquid gold. This is the stuff that's just absolutely amazing for your baby. It's full of all kinds of, it's like concentrated. It's like the nutrients, and it's just this thick, concentrated goodness for the baby, and it's very fulfilling for them. So if you are not, able to, or if you're thinking, well, I should be able to pump out a bunch and all this, don't worry about it. In those first few days before your milk comes in, it's not going to look like a lot. Granted, you're going to feel kind of boxy, but it's not, you're going to be like, wait a minute, what's going on? Your baby is getting enough. Trust me, the colostrum is perfect for them at that stage. But usually 2 to 5 days, your milk will come in, and you will know, because if you thought that they were large before, they will get larger. But don't worry, it won't stay that way. It will even out. Another question when you're nursing in those first few days before your milk comes in is my baby getting enough milk? I would suggest nurse on demand. You're going to hear that probably a lot throughout this video. Just be available, and anytime they start to do those early signs of hunger, they're rooting or they're in their hands or anything like that, just nurse on demand. That's one really great way to make sure that they're getting enough. Just nurse whenever, especially in those very early days. The next question is, how often do I feed my new baby? So now we're assuming that your milk has come in, and I'm going to go ahead and say nurse on demand. That's kind of what I did, and I feel like in the first 30 days, your body is still kind of trying to figure out, do I have one baby? Do I have an army? Is there 6 babies? How much milk do I? So it's important to let your baby help your body figure out what's going on. So if you're nursing on demand, your body's going to figure out that it's going to sync. Baby and breast are going to sync, and it's going to ultimately, after that, the first month or so, ultimately you're going to get on a really great schedule. I probably looked this up, multiple times, but how often should I be feeding my baby? So I'm nursing on demand whenever the baby is hungry or rooting or doing anything like that. I'm just kind of there in these first 30 days. But I was curious, is there a certain amount that I'm supposed to be feeding her? Now, as with anything on the worldwide interwebs, you can find just about anything. But from what I found through kind of reading and researching, you should be expected to feed about every 2 hours. So that equals out to and it depends, every baby's different, but 8 to 12 times in a 24-hour period, maybe 15 times. That's why I say it's probably easiest just to nurse on demand. What I would suggest is not trying to schedule or count it. If you're concerned, my suggestion would be just make a note in your phone, kind of like I had an ongoing note for each kid in my phone, and it was, in the early days, when was the last feeding? 9. Okay, well, at about 10:45, 11, is she starting to get fussy? Well, she's probably ready to eat again. And, at the end of the day, I would think, okay, how many times did I feed her? So, again, this is kind of loose because all babies are different, but 8 to 12 times in a 24-hour period, peaking in the evening hours, which is awesome. That's probably about average, probably about right. Next question, why does my newborn want to feed all the time? It feels like they want to be on me every minute. Yes, they do. There's a couple reasons for that. And actually, we have a really great little picture. It's about an infant's stomach. It's about the size of an apricot. It's not very big. And when you figure how much milk could you fit into an apricot, it's only a little bit. Now their stomach is growing pretty rapidly. It's not going to stay the size of an apricot forever, but in the early stages, they are hungry a lot because they have little tiny tummies. And that's another reason why I would suggest in the first 30 days not to worry about any sort of schedule. For me, anyways, I decided that I wasn't going to necessarily look at the clock as far as when I could feed them. I mean, of course, I was looking to see, I'm paying attention. Is it about every 2 hours? Because I'm trying to learn my baby. But I'm not setting a time in my mind oh, it's not 11 o'clock yet. I'm not going to feed her yet. I mean, that's not the way that I wanted to do it at all, especially within the first 30 days, because they're still trying to figure themselves out. They don't know what's going on either. All they know is that they're hungry and they have a wet bottom and mommy's not so close anymore and all that. So don't worry about a schedule in the first 30 days. Another thing in regards to feeding and frequency, and kind of on that same vein, is something called cluster feeding. Now, I think that, and honestly, when I first experienced this, I will admit that my brain immediately went to, am I not producing enough milk? Is she starving to death? And what do I do? Fortunately, as I mentioned earlier on, I had a really great tribe of women around me who were very encouraging and very knowledgeable about breastfeeding. And someone explained to me early on what a cluster feed is. And Google it, because I'm going to give you just a really quick synopsis. It's basically cluster feeding. They're going to start feeding hour, or maybe half hour, or it's going to feel like all of a sudden they are going from this 2 hours-ish, hour and a half, 3 hours, something in there, to all of a sudden they're wanting to feed every hour. And so as moms, we're thinking, wait a minute, I just nursed you 45 minutes ago, and what's going on? Are you hungry? Oh my gosh, I must not be my supply. There's something wrong with my supply. And then that leads you down a road that you might not want to go. So I would encourage you to look into cluster feeding and understand about that and what that looks like, especially with brand new little babies. Another one of my favorite things, and this is actually one of the ones that I had to ask about because it happened to me and I was like, what is going on? And that is, what is a letdown? Now, of course, maybe some of you were like, oh yeah, a letdown. But I just thought, okay, well, you put the kid on and she suckles for a minute and she's just getting milk. Well, that's actually not the way that it works. Well, it is kind of. But so they latch on and they start to suckle, and it's that suckling that goes to your brain that says, oh, the baby's trying to feed, and then there's a release of oxytocin, and then your milk, it's like your brain's like, okay, the floodgates can open and you can, the milk will flow freely, or it'll fire hose your kids. It's called Overactive letdown, and I have a video about that if you want to watch that, but for the purpose of today, we won't really go into that. But the letdown, this is the part that I didn't know, and I don't know if it's like this for all moms or not, but it's this weird tingling feeling. So I've got the baby on one side, and the letdown happens, and I've got this tingling happening, especially on the other side, and it doesn't feel very good. And then, horrors upon horrors, I'm like, the milk's coming out, and I'm like, what do I do? What's happening? And so I asked my midwife, and she said, oh yeah. She said, early on, when your body's still trying to figure out how many people it should be feeding, your both breasts are going to let down, and it'll, you'll leak or squirt or whatever. And she said, just take a burp cloth or whatever and gently press and just kind of push the nipple in. The tingling will stop, you'll stop leaking, and once your body figures out that there's only one baby on one boob, then it'll stop. But I didn't know that, and my tingling was actually kind of uncomfortable until I figured out what to do with it. So just throw that in there too. The very last question, and probably the most important question of all, is when will it get easier? Very good question. It's probably, at least in my experience, even with both girls, even after with my second one, it was probably a good 4 to 6 weeks before I was like, okay, I kind of have an idea of what's happening. I can do this. And then with my second daughter, it was probably about a month. But there's issues like latch and just kind of learning your baby and learning your body, and it definitely is not just as easy as plugging a switch into a wall. Like it's not as easy, at least for me, it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. One thing that I did early on that really helped me was I was pretty determined that I was going to breastfeed, and so I said to myself, I can do anything for 30 days. I don't care what happens or how much it hurts or how frustrated I get. I will nurse my child for 30 days. And so once I set that goal, I cried my way through a few days and called friends and phoned for help and had a friend come over and show me how to hold my baby and how to latch and with the lips and all that, which is a great reason why you want to have a lactation consultant, because some babies, like my second, like to nurse like this. And so that hurts, okay? They're supposed to look like little fish, like that, but she went, Anyway, that's why it's important to have a tribe, and at least, most importantly, a lactation consultant, because they can help with those things. But I told myself I can do anything for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, I said, all right, I'm going to go another 30 days. And by the end of that middle of the second month, into the second month, and moving on into 3 months, it got a lot easier. It got way more enjoyable. It's free. There's no bottles. There's nothing else that you got to worry about. You just, at that point, you've learned enough about your baby and your body has chilled out that it becomes actually a very sweet relationship, and it gets a lot easier. So by 3 months with both of my kids, we were good. We were golden. If you liked today's video, I would encourage you to check out our Facebook page. We have a Facebook page, and every day we're posting just stuff about families, kids, and we also talk about upcoming videos. You'll get promos for those when we post new videos, which is every week. If you liked the video, I would be so encouraged if you gave it a like and left a comment if you have anything that you want to add to the discussion. I always enjoy that as well. And I'd like to invite you to be a subscriber. If you're not already, then you can kind of join with us on our on our journey, which would be amazing to have you with us. And as always, if there's anybody in your life that would benefit from this, please share it. I think that would be amazing. I think that the more we know about the hard stuff, the better off we'll be. So thanks so much for joining. Hope you guys have a great day, and hopefully we will see you again next time. Bye.